Yes, no, it's easier. I geeked out on it. I wanted to do it. I made it like a few minutes ago.
Dean made a new timer today.
Ever since I was on that last podcast where I was the guest, and that guy had like the really snazzy opening, Eric Dickman, on the virtual CMO podcast, and I was the guest there. I said, "Damn, now I fully understand what the word covet means."
Yep.
I coveted his intro and outro, and I'm gonna do even better because I own that. I made that, and now I'm gonna start putting words and stuff on it, and
Does this mean your favorite old book is going to be the Bible or the Talmud?
There's an idea. All right, so welcome. Today's Thursday. That was our easy opening, which will get, I promise, even cheesier. There's no coming back from this, guys. There's no coming back. No. One of the things we've been wanting to talk about for a long, long time now is sort of the books that have had one or two kind of like nuggets in them that it's great. Like a book is great when you just get one thing out of it, but that thing stays with you for a very, very long time. And so we've each got 1, 2, or 3 books that have been published. Some of them, the oldest one that I have is about 10 years old, I think. No, the newest one that I'm about to show is 10 years old, and the oldest is about 20 years old. But these books, they're not necessarily long, but they're just jewels. And each one of them has one or more sort of lessons or takeaways or a different way of looking at something that completely shifted how I think about, a particular marketing or business topic. Now, who wants to go first?
You know what?
By the way, Dr.
John does.
Is in the process of moving, so his books are all packed up. If you want a few minutes and you think it's worthwhile, it's totally okay to just bring up the Amazon pages for those books and then share your screen.
I actually found one.
Oh, what do you got?
Oh. Well, it's how old is this sucker? That's a good question. I don't even know, but Cialdini's Influence. You're featured. By the way, Dean, you're featured, and nobody can see me unless they go to this really small picture of me.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that shouldn't be like that. Well, it's on the same
star of the show.
Hey.
There you go. That looks good.
That does look good. Influence.
Anyway,
very nice.
Now he's back to featuring himself, which is fine, which is perfectly fine since he's the one who created this thing. So for me, there are a few things that did stick to me in this book are in particular his notion of scarcity and the notion of authority. Now, scarcity is often, and the problem that I have with this book, mind the way, it's not my favorite book, but it's the one I could grab out of the box. Yeah. Is that his stuff is overused by almost every marketer on the planet. There's Robert Cialdini says this, and Robert Cialdini says
changed the story for all of marketing and a lot of sales.
Exactly. And so even though there's some good stuff in there, I've only picked out a few things, and quite frankly, I've never read the entire book. I've picked out like 3 chapters or so, which are the ones, and that's kind of the way I operate with most nonfiction businessy marketing books. There's some interesting psychological experiments in there. Like I still remember the thing about the fellow who came in there, was it Friedman or so, who came into a research project and he told all these little boys not to touch the robot. And it's the experiment of don't touch the robot. And the reason that was just interesting to me is because it showed the notion of almost like Inception, which you plant the idea in the kids that even though there's an external threat that's involved, it needs to become their choice not to touch the robot. And so there's this path along the way of how he changes external locus of control to internal, that it really becomes your idea, not someone else's idea. And that one got me quite well. The other book that is really old, the manuscript was from 1931, still one of my favorite books. And you may not think that this has anything to do with marketing or influence or business, but it really does. And it's a book by a chiropractor, Dr. Thurman Fleet, F-L-E-E-T, not the guy who created the Fleet enema, but his chiropractor out of San Antonio, Texas, who created an institute for higher learning for medical doctors, religious people, business people, multimillionaires had taken a lot of his work. And the book was called Dr. Thurman Fleet's Rays of the Dawn. Now, it sounds really spiritual and woo-woo, But in there, he has laws of the body, mind, and soul. The mental laws are really interesting because his whole approach was to gain a degree of emotional control so that you could function better in business, and also so that you can help other people by helping them to modulate their emotions. And I think everything that we do in copywriting and selling really is stimulating feelings in people. And
Yeah.
it correlates with Cialdini's book too, which which is that you want to somehow overcome their logic with emotion. And my favorite phrase in this book, it's not necessarily my favorite, but it's the one that sticks in my head forever, like an inception idea, is that indecision leads to perdition, which is that it's better to make it. So if you're not deciding on something, it will result in total annihilation. So it's better to make a decision and then change your decision than to live in the land of uncertainty.
Yeah. Or in copywriting, that's been reframed into the confused buyer does nothing.
Right. And too many choices result in
that
nobody
is no
making a
choice. Yeah. Oh, by the way, this is sort of an aside, but it should be. So you guys, no one in the audience is going to know this, but very often there's sort of an after show after this show, which is not broadcast, it's just the three of us. And these two guys, anytime I come across any sort of new guru kind of marketers doing this, hey, like, have you ever talked about something from Ryan Lee? Oh yeah, I know Ryan. I live like 3 minutes from him. Like these guys always know every friggin' person.
3 hours.
Well, I had no idea what books you were going to bring.
I just had coffee with him.
Contribute. I know Bob Cialdini. I know him. I've met him. I've eaten with him. I've done his course in Phoenix. I actually have met and know, and I mean, we're not friends or anything, but I know Bob Cialdini. And I
think you should put your face up bigger. I'm too big when you're telling your Cialdini story. You need to.
That's okay. I don't need to be big.
All right. Okay.
So get this. A couple of days ago, I get approached by the Project Management Institute, like one of the Toastmasters groups they have in North Carolina.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just as a speaker, they had no idea. The lady who was sort of the VP of education there, I've known her for a few years. She had no idea that I was a member of the Project Management Institute, or that I'd been a certified PMP for decades. So she comes on for a quick Zoom call so we can talk about what the topics might be. She sent some topics, but I didn't think they were like particularly suited to me. And then I said, so when I was a younger lad and in project management and stuff, I worked for a company called Kronos. Which, if you've ever been in a hospital or the airport or whatever, and you've seen those like black time, like that's Kronos. And I was a project manager there. And at one point, the finance department decides that now, if you're a project management, especially a customer-facing project manager, like your job after they make the initial purchase is to go in and deploy everything, and it's very software heavy. I mean, you think it's just a clock, but there's a lot of software that has to be set up on it. And I get a call, first an email, and then a call, because I've developed a whole methodology for expanding the size of my projects, increasing customer satisfaction, but doubling or tripling or whatever the initial budget that the customer had agreed to, and the customer was happy about it. So I get an email, and then I follow up with a call a few days later from the finance department saying, hey, I don't know if you saw our email, but we're no longer accepting change requests to increase the size of projects, but for anything less than $10,000 at a time. And I say, yeah, that's not going to work for me, because I understand at this point I had maybe 12 customers and 18 projects underway. It was an insane job. Mm-hmm. And I said, yeah, that's not going to work for me. I'm not going to do that. And say, well, it's too much work for us to process all of these change requests, because Bob goes into this process. Cialdini goes into this story about how you get people to agree to big things by first getting them to agree to. First of all, I just want to put a little sticker about this cause or a political candidate in your screen door, and then it's a lawn sign, and then it's a big lawn sign, and then you're contributing money to the campaign. And I said, yeah, so I have this whole process that I didn't go into all the details. This whole process, and I can't kick off the process with a $10,000 like initial buy. That's not going to happen. And she said, well, I'm going to have to escalate this to our CFO. And I said, I'm totally fine with you escalating this to the CFO. First, for your own sake, why not run a report on the total value that I've added to the company's top line? Pick any period, let's say the previous 12 months, and I have that in your hand when you contact the CFO. And then, given you, I just told you how many clients and projects I'm running at any particular time, right? So that call ended, and I completely forgot about that call. Didn't care. Wasn't going to follow what they wanted to do anyway, right? So I happen to be in Atlanta. I'm in this little sandwich shop about an hour and a half later. The phone rings. It's like a Boston area phone number, and this is maybe 15 plus years ago. So if someone called you on your cell phone, you would answer it, even though you didn't recognize the number back then, right? Mm-hmm. So ancient history.
Could have been me.
I pick up the phone and someone says, "Is this Dean?" And I say, "Yeah." He says, "Yeah, we've looked at it. Don't worry about it." Hung up. I say, I have no idea what just happened, right? Then my manager calls me, not even like a minute after that call ended. And I said, "Hey, I was just talking to his manager," he says, "who was just talking to the CFO. Did you just get a call from the CFO?" And I said, "Is that who that was?" And he said, "Yeah. Like, do you realize what you did?" And I say, "I don't know." And he said, "You added in the last 12 months $1.2 million of unforecasted revenue to the top line. You average $100,000 a month in money they never forecasted or expected to see." Wow. So that guy said, whatever he's doing, leave him alone.
Leave him alone.
Yeah. That's all it was. We saw her fine. Hung up. What the hell?
Rubber stamp it.
I'm trying to eat a sandwich. I'm very busy and I've got 30 minutes for lunch. That's all I got. But the whole thing was built. The entire process and methodology was built on Bob Cialdini's book. And that's what I'll be talking about to these project managers at the PMI in January.
Awesome. Oh, there you go. Well, then it's a good thing that was towards the top of the pile in the book.
It's so weird. I happen to know what you're talking about because I don't know anybody. I do all my own stuff and kind of like it that way. Anyway, all right. Do you have any others, or are we handing it off to John?
I'm pretty good for now. I'm sure there's several others that'll pop into my head, but John is. We need literature for the illiterate. Is what I.
What do you got, John?
There you
John
go.
doesn't like to read.
I got a couple things.
Okay.
So one is actually a new book that for me has been life changing. Not super new, but sort of new, and it's actually one of Dr. V's favorites too. It's called. It is. It's called Atomic Habits.
Oh yeah.
Oh yes, from Clear, right?
I love Atomic Habits because I'm always Jimmy one of these guys. I'm always one of these guys that gets overwhelmed with things, and realizing that doing things in small increments can make a huge difference. And so that book for me was like life changing.
Any particular lesson? I have one particular lesson from Atomic Habits that. Like it made a lot of sense to me. And then when I thought about it, I realized how clever James Clear was being by phrasing it that way.
Well,
like a little mind control Jedi thing he was doing on all his readers.
Well, we'll trade. So I'll tell you one thing that I got is here's a guy who was injured amazingly badly and went through this long spell that he came back from. And I had that kind of same thing happen to me.
Right.
Where I had a really long spell of I couldn't really work. And it took a long time to get over that. And here's a guy who did that exactly and came back from it, not only, stronger than ever. So that was my kind of big lesson that I got out of it. But just small little incremental things can get you back even beyond where you thought you could be. So go ahead, I'll let you do your.
One of Claire's concepts there is that let's say you want to set up like a daily habit, because most of these things are daily kind of thing, right? It's like tiny little things and you stack them up, right? So one of his concepts is even if you have to break it, you never break it 2 days in a row.
True.
Right. So if your goal was to work out every day, then even if you don't get to work out today, you can't that's how people slide and then things end up being permanently never happening, right? So even you can forgive yourself for not doing it today, but you have to do it tomorrow. No 2 days in a row.
Unless you're moving because you're carrying heavy boxes.
The trick that most people wouldn't recognize in that is, let's say that your plan was this year for 100 days, you were going to not smoke, right? or for 100 days you were going to take a vitamin, or for 100 days you were going to walk 2 miles, and you're someone who's never walked before, basically. Like, you don't exercise in any way, right? The trick that he pulls on the audience, and it's like a benign and really kind of amazing trick, is that worst case scenario, you break the habit every other day. And so you slide back, but then you don't go 2 days in a row of sliding back. So you go ahead and you do your walk. But then the next day, so Monday you slide. And then Tuesday, nope, I got to do it. I can't do it 2 days in a row. And then Wednesday you slide again. And then on Thursday, no, I can't do it 2 days in a row. At the end of the 100 days, you've done 50 walks, and before you would have done none.
Right.
And so just that concept is, there's a little tiny bit of slack and wiggle room in this, but it only goes so far, and then you have to get back on it. That little bit means that at a minimum, you'll do half as much of your goal, which is an infinite amount more than doing nothing. So very clever the way he phrased it that way.
So my question is, would this apply to intermittent fasting when some people, did you know intermittent?
Yeah, absolutely.
They do it from Monday through Friday, but to maintain their sanity as well as the other, they kind of go off the rails a little bit on Saturday, Sunday, and then they're back to it 5 days a week.
Maybe if they wanted to set up their own like permission, basically you're setting up a guardrail, right?
Yeah.
Beyond which you are not allowed to go. I do IF, and the only wiggle room I have is, instead of a 4-hour window every day, I have a 5-hour window on Saturdays. That's it.
Right.
An extra hour. That's it.
Yeah. I usually give myself a little extra.
Your guardrail doesn't need to move much for you to feel like, oh wow, extra cool, right? It doesn't need to double. It just needs to move a tiny bit. It's like you feel the extra space feels extra to you. All right, what else you got, John?
Okay, so the other thing that I was,
by the way, I half expect you to say that you've known James Clear for all of your life.
No,
and, you're taking his course or whatever, and like him personally, and you did you know so many people, John. Like
I do know a lot of people.
Anyone might hear of.
The only person that I know that I have had lunch with and really had a great time with, and a lot of people know about
Ryan.
him. I do know Ryan, but Tom Hopkins is another person that. So Tom Hopkins was big in real estate and financial sales, okay. And I got to have lunch with Tom Hopkins once, and he's got like 1 million books on sales.
Right.
And so that's one person I can say I know. I've had lunch with.
All right. What other book you got?
All right. What other books have I got? So I know you and I and Dr. V are big fans of The Brilliance Breakthrough and Gene Schwartz.
Yeah. I'm not a fan of The Brilliance Breakthrough, but I am a fan of Breakthrough Advertising. The Brilliance Breakthrough is the worst literary slog I've ever done in my life. I felt like I'd run a 26K Tough Mudder type of thing.
That's the thing. So one of the things that's kind of cool is I think Brian realized that too. So Brian Kurtz, of course, markets the books. He was one of Gene Schwartz's students, and he came out with the advertising solution, and he came out with... I've
never heard of this one.
And he came out with Over Deliver.
Right.
And of course, I think it goes through a lot of the things that are in Brilliance Breakthrough and things that he learned from Gene Schwartz. Kind of summarizes it, which is what...
I'll be buying those today.
What you really need to slog through. Well, you're welcome.
Yeah. Thank you.
I got another one. So I don't think any discussion of books could be done justice without mentioning .com Secrets from Russell Brunson.
Good old Russell Brunson. Russell Brunson, in case you don't know, John, of course, but he's the founder of
ClickFunnels.
No, not ClickBank, ClickFunnels. Yeah.
ClickFunnels. And I think most of us, before we read this book, had no idea how to put funnels together, why it made any difference,
right.
How to sell different things, how to determine what our audience looked like. And this was the first place that most of us learned about this.
Yeah.
Was from .com Secrets. So so I got that. And then I don't remember.
Just to recap, like a one-liner for the audience. Essentially, .com Secrets talks about the sales and upselling power of a structured buyer journey from the time you get them until the time they finally like click on the final buy button. And
Yes.
he was sort of the first, or one of the first people, to not just talk about the power of doing that and its effect on consumers, but also built a software platform that let who knows how many tens of thousands of businesses or actually build something like that to do online selling.
Exactly. And of course, the last one, because you prompted me to go through my pile of books this morning. Right. The last one I picked up was the YouTube Formula from Derral Eves. And of course,
never heard of it.
Derral, very well known for his work on YouTube, speaks everywhere about his work on YouTube. And he's one of the few people that YouTube actually listens to as an evangelist for them. Okay. And so I can't pick out any specific thing from this book, but in general, it was a great read all about YouTube, how to use it, how the algorithm works, how to get the best growth from it, and how to start building your audience on it. And I mean, there's a couple other YouTube guys to watch. Brian Johnson came out with a book on YouTube. It's really, really good. Jeremy Vest is another guy. But there's a lot of folks interested in YouTube right now, and in video in general. And a lot of what you can learn from the 1,800-pound gorilla passes down to things like TikTok and Instagram, and the principles of making good video are the same really everywhere. So I just kind of brought that up. Like I said, can't remember anything specific in it, but I do remember overall it was a great read. And Derral, of course, is constantly brought in for his knowledge.
Lives next door to you.
You guys
are godfather to each other's children.
Never even met him once.
No.
So no. I'm hoping to keep it, though. I don't get around much.
But we got about 7.5 minutes left, so let's talk about this.
Your turn.
My turn, I guess. Here we go. Okay, so this one you can pick up. It's about 20 years old. You can pick it up on Amazon in the Kindle version for, I bet, not even $4 or $5. This book is amazing. It's one of those books that succeeds in spite of itself because it's not particularly well written. The author decided to turn a business book into a novel. And so it reads like a novel, but not a very great novel. But here's what The Art of Profitability does. The author goes through, and this guy, Slavatsky, he's written a few books. He's called Professor. I'm not sure he's active anymore. He wrote many books about how businesses actually make money, not how they operate, not their business model, but just profit. And there's all kinds of examples from all kinds of companies that you know about. Mattel and Barbies, Disney, big talent agencies, Dell, Coca-Cola, you name it. They all make money in very different ways from each other. Pfizer, all kinds of them. And the chapters are really short. There's lots of diagrams. It's very easy. You will never look at just how you walk through or interact with any company or product again once you read this little tiny slim volume, which you can probably read in like an hour or an hour and a half. The Art of Profitability, like it's one of those books that someone lays out for you. It's like someone peels away all of the sort of advertising and front end stuff and just shows you how a machine works in like 5 seconds. And it's like, wow, I totally get it now. It totally makes sense why Southwest Airlines does this and why Walmart does that versus Target and so on. It's such an eye opener. For the sake of $5, you absolutely should be reading The Art of Profitability. This one is also written about 10 years ago. This one is one of those books where it's actually extraordinarily well written. It's written by an advertising guy. I'm sure he's a copywriter. Like it reads like a copywriter wrote it. And there's something useful on it's just like a large collection. It's not a very big book, but it's 1 + 1 = 3 by Dave Trott. And it is, I think he's English. And it's just a series of stories to illustrate his various lessons. And he's great at boiling down a lot of the stuff. And he boils down all of marketing at one point to just, where is it? Yeah, he boils down all of marketing to just 3 questions. And it is, what do I want? Who do I want it from? And why should they do it? Or what's for them? That's it. And really, you can boil down a lot of the work that I do with helping people with positioning statements and writing their copy and their pitch decks and all this landing pages and everything else is that I need them to know what they want. And ideally, as much as they can, I want them to know who they want it from. And then ultimately, it's my job to figure out how to convince somebody to do it for them. But 3 simple, very short sentences that just completely change the conversation, because everyone comes in talking about, this and that and their model and blah, 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 and their goal and blah. I said, no. All I need to know and all you need to know, and if you don't know these questions, we need to start with that first, is what do you want? Who do you want it from? And why should that person do it?
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy, so simple. And then there's a template that I use, a strategy template for helping businesses and entrepreneurs figure out what exactly we're going for. There's even elements of that template. And at this point, it's like a gigantic mind map with a whole bunch of things in it. But there's even elements in the video we did last Thursday. Some, I think 1 or 2 of the questions out of the 21 questions for the positioning workshop that we're doing this coming Thursday, so a week from today, on the 8th, came from this book, which is just Good Strategy, Bad Strategy. Don't bother reading the second half of this book. It's a bunch of already outdated kind of things. Although he does have a tiny little anecdote about Steve Jobs that I thought was pretty interesting. It takes 3 sentences. But this is Good Strategy, Bad Strategy by Rumelt, Rumelt. And it does a great job for regular people explaining how business strategy works. And then he does not, however, and this is why I had to make sort of my own visual guide to it all. He does not lay out in any way all of the pieces and how they interact. So I had to make my own. That in itself was a great intellectual exercise and very helpful for me. But it's a really solid, easy to follow along understanding of how to conceive of and then design and then to some degree even execute on a strategy for your own business or your own career. Fabulous book. The first half of it, anyway. So those were my 3: Art of Profitability, 1 + 1 = 3, and Good Strategy, Bad Strategy.
Awesome.
All right, and we're going to finish 2 minutes early, which is nice. I'm kind of shocked that you don't know the authors of your books. You don't even know Brunson?
I let's put it this way. I sort of do. Yeah. But I mean, I have connected with him on occasion, but I don't really know him.
Okay.
A lot of people I kind of know peripherally,
right,
that have written some of the books. I do know Brian.
Tight buddies like me and Bob Cialdini.
No.
As I said, we are not tight.
Nothing like that. No.
All right. That's it for today, and that's it for this week. And we're back, I guess, on Tuesday. Monday's a holiday here in the United States, and also in Canada, and maybe other countries, and Labor Day. And then we have a Tuesday and a Wednesday show, and then on Thursday we have our 90-minute workshop. So there will not be one of these videos on Thursday. Instead, we're doing an only on LinkedIn event where we're walking. I forget how many people are going to be at this thing. I know we're in triple digits for the number of registrations. Yeah. And so we'll be doing it live on LinkedIn and walking through the 21-question positioning workshop to help various career seekers, job seekers, small business people, large business people who work for large businesses but are thin, whatever.
Yeah.
We'll be walking them through the entire workshop, and there's our workbook. So if you, I think on Tuesday, John, and then on Wednesday, we'll probably put up a link or show a link for how to register for that. Or you can just find me on LinkedIn, Dean Way. I think I'm the only Dean Way on LinkedIn. Certainly, I'm the only one that has this hairstyle. And then you can find it from there, or we'll provide the link for it later. There you go.
Similar hairstyle.
All right. Yeah, similar hairstyles. All right. So that's it for this week. Thanks, everyone.